It's August the 3rd, 2023, and our reading today in the book of Ecclesiastes is in chapter 8. Who is like the wise man? Who knows the explanation of things? Wisdom brightens a man's face and changes its hard appearance. Obey the king's command, I say, because you took an oath before God. Do not be in a hurry to leave the king's presence. Do not stand up for a bad cause, for he will do whatever he pleases. Since the king's word is supreme, who can say to him, "What are you doing?" Whoever obeys his command will come to no harm, and the wise heart will know the proper time and procedure. For there is a proper time and procedure for every matter, though a man's misery weighs heavily upon him. Since no man knows the future, who can tell him what is to come? No man has power over the wind to contain it, so no one has power over the day of his death. As no one is discharged in time of war, so wickedness will not release those who practice it. All this I saw as I applied my mind to everything done under the sun. There is a time when a man lords it over others to his own hurt. Then too I saw the wicked buried, those who used to come and go from the holy place and receive praise in the city where they did this. This too is meaningless. When the sentence for a crime is not quickly carried out, the hearts of the people are filled with schemes to do wrong. Although a wicked man commits 100 crimes and still lives a long time, I know that it will go better with God-fearing men who are reverent before God. Yet because the wicked do not fear God, it will not go well with them, and their days will not lengthen like a shadow. There's something else meaningless that occurs on earth. Righteous men who get what the wicked deserve, and wicked men who get what the righteous deserve. This too, I say, is meaningless. So I commend the enjoyment of life, because nothing is better for a man under the sun than to eat and drink and be glad. Then joy will accompany him in his work all the days of the life God has given him under the sun. When I applied my mind to know wisdom and to observe man's labor on earth, his eyes not seeing sleep day or night, then I saw all that God has done. No one can comprehend what goes on under the sun. Despite all his efforts to search it out, man cannot discover its meaning. Even if a wise man claims he knows, he cannot really comprehend it. Amen. Well, here we are again, looking into the subject of wisdom. That word pops up a few times in this chapter, not quite as much as in the previous chapter, but it's just a continuation of the same thought, isn't it? Wisdom, in verse 1, how beautiful it is and how beneficial it is to us to have that wisdom that brightens a man's face, verse 1. The wisdom that leads us to honor the God-given authority structures that God has built into society, verses 2 to 6. That's a wise person, not a rebel, not a revolutionary who wants to tear it all down and start again. No, the structures of society here summed up in the king, obey the king's command. We could add to that other authority structures within society like magistrates and the police force. We could add to that the family, parents who have been given that authority over their children for the sake of their children. And of course in the church leaders who they don't, and we mustn't take these roles to ourselves as if to say, look at me, listen to me, do what I say. No, these are roles, responsibilities, and authority that's been given to people by God. And as we obey those and submit to those, it is so good for us and so good for society generally. True wisdom involves recognizing our limitations. We've seen this before. None of us knows the future. Verse 7. None of us has power over the wind. You can't catch it. You can't put it in a bottle. It's elusive. It's mysterious. And no one has power over the day of his death. A wise person accepts certain limitations in life. And there are other principles, what we might call natural principles, verses 9 to 13, which again are built into the very fabric of creation and society and our very humanity. And verses 9 to 13 show us what happens when we go against those natural principles. For example, the wicked man in verse 10, who lords it over others, who struts around, coming and going from the holy place, receiving praise in the city where he did, he's lording it over, he's setting himself up as a great one. But he dies and he's buried. The most foolish thing in the world is to be a proud person, full of yourself, but many are. And he confesses, this is meaningless. This too is meaningless. Make sense of that. But it does happen. And then finally in this chapter, verses 14 to 17, really following on from that, again, the word meaningless keeps recurring again and again and again. Everything's so confusing. Everything is so topsy-turvy. Look at verse 14. When righteous men get what the wicked deserve, and wicked men get what the righteous deserve. I mean, we do observe that in life. And ultimately, God is the judge. Ultimately, he will judge the wicked. He will reward the righteous. If not in this life, certainly in the life to come. But in this life, it doesn't look like it. That's very confusing for a lot of people. That's why he says, basically, look, just don't focus on those imponderable things. That'll drive you crazy. Simply enjoy the simple things of life. Verse 15. So I commend the enjoyment of life, because nothing is better for a man under the sun than to eat and drink and be glad. Then joy will accompany him in his work. Now, there are greater things in life than that, to do with the heavenly dimension and the heavenly kingdom. But as far as life in this world is concerned, if you can just be happy in your work, if you can eat, drink, and be glad, and if you can just sort of enjoy the simple pleasures of life, what a happy man and what a wise person you will be, rather than always striving for more and being full of yourself and arrogant and seeking greater and bigger things constantly, and not just taking stock and saying, look what I've got, by the grace of God, and enjoying those things. Ultimately, if we're just looking at life under the sun, yes, what I've said thus far is true. We can have a real measure of contentment and enjoyment, but there's another sense, and he uses the word twice in verses 16 to 17, where actually life in the ultimate sense is actually incomprehensible. Actually, you cannot work it out. You cannot make sense of it all unless God chooses to reveal himself to us and to explain the mysteries and give us the meaning, which is ultimately not under the sun, not in this life, not in us. It's from the Lord himself. And who does God choose to reveal such meaning to such wisdom too. It's the man who's described in James, the book of James, particularly chapter 1 and verse 5. The man who's humble enough to say, I'm not wise, I lack wisdom. Verse 5. If any of you lacks wisdom, and the one who asks God, it says there, verse 5. The God who gives generously to all without finding fault. And it, wisdom, understanding, meaning, will be given to him.